So thank you, Ed, so much for the introduction. I definitely miss the Boston accent. I especially miss here in D.C. that there's very few Dunkin' Donuts. But thank you for having me. Look, I'm not a big prepared remarks kind of guy, so I'm just going to talk to you from the heart. I think one of the things that when we look at history, where we are today, like what are we going to look back at 2025 as? I think a few things. Number one, this is now an inflection point where the Republican Party is the party that embraces working Americans, that we're not an anti-union party in any way for one very simple reason. Any policy, any organization that strengthens and supports working Americans to build a strong, thriving middle class in this country is imperative. As Ed said in his intro, I was born in Colombia, South America, where you have plenty of rich people and plenty of poor people, but what you don't have is a thriving middle class. That's what makes America unique. So I think the good news for us is that we have a party that embraces unions now, instead of thinking that, union bad, I'm a Republican, I'm not going to be for unions. I think that's now shattered. I think that's number one. Number two is we have to reset our priorities as a country. I think for a long time, America's looked outward and said, how do we help other countries? And not that we don't want to play a leadership role in the world, we will play a leadership role in the world. But as we're looking at our priorities, what are the things that we're going to spend our precious tax dollars on? Is making certain that we build up Americans first. It doesn't mean Americans only, but that we prioritize the interests of Americans. What's a good example of that? I was talking to a group of you before I came up here and said, look, the Social Security Fairness Act. Are you sick and tired of 20 years in which the government was ripping you off, was stealing your money? You put in money in Social Security, but somehow that money was siphoned away because of some technicality. That took 20 years for D.C. to solve. We can never have those kinds of situations ever again. So I'm hoping that now that this is in place, it got put in place a couple months ago, that these checks start going out and we stop robbing people, especially the people who put their lives at risk to protect us. That was long overdue, and we got to make certain that that happens. We also have to look at making certain that we take care of the people who are putting their lives at risk to support us and take care of us. That means making certain that we invest in research around what are the dangerous chemicals that you're around, and that we support those that have medical issues as a result of the jobs, that you're allowed to have the free speech that every American is granted by our Constitution. So if you're somebody who is a firefighter in Alabama or in Florida or in Georgia, and you have something to say, you should be allowed to say whatever's on your mind just like any other American, with zero retribution from your employer. Zero. It's kind of honestly a little crazy when you think and say, we're going to take away fundamental rights from the people who wake up every day to protect and save us. And those are the types of things we're doing. I think when you look at 2025 as this inflection point, this idea that, look, what are our priorities as a nation? I was asking a group, what's the average budget of your typical fire department? Not, Boston, right? And not some tiny little town, but on average, it's, call it $15 million all-in budget. The third thing that's happening is, look, we got to stop having government total and complete burning, sorry to use that analogy, of our taxpayer dollars. What do I mean by that? Through the DOGE effort, you hear a lot of reporting out there of what they're doing. Let me tell you what they're actually doing. They've done an effort to find out where's all this waste going. 4.7 million credit cards issued to government employees. You know the problem? There's only 2.2 million government employees. Imagine having 2.5 million credit cards. You have no idea who has them. It is totally crazy. When you send a check, and you guys know this, you need something at your station, you have to fill out a requisition and a form, and it's very cumbersome. The Treasury sends out $1 billion in disbursements every hour. The field to say, hey, what is this for? Like, what is it attached to on the expense? Is an optional field, or shall I say, was an optional field until we put that in place. There was payments that were going out on autopilot that the question was, hey, could you get us a receipt? And once that question got asked, there were no longer requests for disbursements. We were sending out hundreds of billions of dollars to things that made no sense. We had the Small Business Administration, 13,000 employees, 37,000 software licenses, hundreds of millions of dollars of wasted money. And yet, if you need to replace your fire truck that your station bought before you were even born, you have to spend 10 years begging for peanuts. And yet we send billions of dollars to foreign countries, fund endless wars, and waste money on things that we shouldn't be doing. So when I say a reset of priorities, it means we're going to treat our taxpayer dollars carefully, and we're going to put it into the things that make the best and most valuable use of your money. Those are the three things that we're working on here. I'd never been elected even class president, by the way, and ran for office because, quite frankly, I thought our government lost its ever-living mind during COVID, and said, you know, these elected leaders have never actually done anything of substance in their lives, and yet they're exercising authority and decision-making without any basis. Hey, you know what? I'm going to run for office. I started my campaign. My name ID in Ohio was 4%. That was the good news. The bad news is it was a 4% margin of error. So there's chances that nobody knew who I was. I ran in the most expensive non-presidential election in American history. $550 million was spent on my race. About half of that was negative ads on me, to the point where prior to the election, I hated myself. I thought I was a terrible human being. So I'm glad all that was over. Senator Vance became Vice President Vance, which is what gave me the promotion, which comes with exactly nothing other than being able to say you're the senior senator. But look, just know this. My office, you have a wide open door. Anything that I can do to help you, to support you, to advance your cause, to get rid of the things that are just total and complete nonsense, to restore common sense, come see us. I'm very excited to welcome all of you in 2028 to Ohio, to Cleveland, my hometown, where we're going to have a lot of great things for you. I made sure the conference was in August, not in January, because in January we don't show well, but in August we do. We have a beautiful lake. We have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Browns will be starting their season in late August. This is the year that we're going to win the Super Bowl, so we'll be Super Bowl champs by then.
They'll be out of playoff contention by August.
Oh, that's so mean. He said they'll be out of playoff contention in August. Give us till at least that hurt. That hurt. It's actually accurate, but it hurt nonetheless. But look, you're going to have a great time in Cleveland. It's a great town. We love our firefighters in Ohio. We truly, truly thank you. You don't hear this enough, honestly. I think you hear a lot of words and you hear a lot of empty promises from politician after politician. Shockingly, right around election season is when you start hearing from them more and more, right? They ignore your calls, they ignore your meeting requests, and then all of a sudden, wait, I'm up for re-election. Did I say you wanted to meet with me? Absolutely, come on in. Look, you're not going to find that from me. I've committed to serve one term, or if the voters of Ohio think I'm doing a good job, 2 terms, and that's it. I'm coming home. I don't think you should spend your entire life here, and I certainly don't think that you should be driven around the Capitol in a wheelchair. I think that's probably the first sign that it's time to retire. So that's not going to be me. I will not be drooling while I vote. So that means that I have a limited amount of time to get stuff done. And just, again, know this. You don't hear it very often. Every single person in your community truly appreciates everything that you guys do. When I lived in Boston, it was 9/11, and my boss volunteered his helicopter to go help some of the first responders down there, so I went there to kind of meet some of the people in New York. And I remember watching from not maybe 4 blocks away what was going on in Ground Zero, and to see the firefighters that wouldn't leave there, that would not abandon their fellow firefighters, the dedication that they showed. You guys are the true heroes. And what we need to say loudly and clearly is that we owe all of you an enormous debt of gratitude, and that will not be forgotten. It will certainly not be forgotten in my U.S. Senate office. So thank you, and it was an honor to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much.